Hi. It's still Wednesday evening. I'm going to try to record the other video, this one about the end of today. I will post this Thursday night because I do think having a 24-hour sort of buffer emotionally for me to process, for me to have the trauma, process the trauma, share the trauma, and then just sort of let it be before I deal with literally sharing it with you guys is probably for the best. As always, please don't share this video at this point. I'm only sharing these with a subset of my friends. I'm not looking to go viral. I would be kind of really uncomfortable with that while I'm actually still here and doing this process. Also, you know, I don't generally go viral, so that'll be fine. Anyway, this is one case where I really don't want this shared. Maybe when I'm back in Nashville, I'll feel like this is a place to start with advocacy beyond what I'm doing here. But right now, it's just a little too raw for it to be that. This is just catharsis. After I finished this hearing this morning and did the paperwork, we were approaching 1:30. And I then saw three sets of mothers with children. The first one was a horrific gang violence case. The second one is a tougher sell, and it's just because there's less trauma, which is really good. But it does involve gangs and the attempted recruitment of a relatively very young child. The final one was hands down the hardest set of facts I've dealt with. Not hardest as yesterday's case that I spoke of in the earlier video was, where I just have to try to find a way to translate all of this trauma that doesn't fit into the accepted categories. I have to find a way to argue the facts of the case in a way that allows these people to get to asylum. In this case, I feel very strongly that she will get asylum, or at least will meet the credible fear threshold, and then has to go about the asylum process after that. But unbelievable horrors have been visited upon this one very strong, sort of unsinkable woman from El Salvador. Everybody I dealt with today was from El Salvador. Honduras is a political nightmare. El Salvador is just a straight up freaking nightmare. I mean, all the worst cases of domestic violence that I've heard are from El Salvador. And I mean, violence on a scale and on a schedule that is so beyond the, white suburban American understanding of what domestic violence is. My clients in the past few days and clients of others I've heard, I mean, they're dealing with teeth being kicked out and while their faces were stomped. They are dealing with children being horribly beaten as a way to punish the mother. And there is so much sexual violence that it seems like it's almost casual. We use the term toxic masculinity a lot in our country, and rightly so, because there's a strain. When we talk about toxic masculinity in America, we're talking about the stuff that, if unchecked, and if it were allowed to be taken to its logical extreme, would be this. But it's so far beyond what we have in the States as far as just a cultural understanding of women as worthless. It's kind of breathtaking to see these women, one by one, after being molested by uncles and beaten by fathers and married off at 14 to people who terrorized them for 20 years, suddenly stop and say, I am not worthless and I am out of here and you could kill me, but that is a risk I'm willing to take because even that would be better than this. These women are amazing, what they put up with. Not what they put up with, but what they've been through. And then they find themselves here with their children literally clinging to them. Today's final prep was a woman whose domestic violence case was an El Salvadoran-style domestic violence case and was on par, if not worse than, every single thing I've heard here, whether that I experienced, that I, from my clients or other people just sort of detoxing in the break room about, oh my God, I can't, this is what I just heard, I have to tell somebody. She's been through it. She has been battered and abused and raped and been forced to have sex in order to support her children by the father of her children. Like, he wouldn't give her money to feed their common children. So awful. She got the guts to leave. She got the guts to go to court. She managed to get an order of protection that this piece of crap actually abided by for the short duration that it was in effect. She got a divorce. She started dating. She met a fantastic guy. Who adopted her children and loves them and loves her and treats her like a princess. But this is not a happy story, because as soon as she found a new guy, her ex-husband, who has 2 older sons who are not hers, started using MS-13, which his older sons belong to terrorize her further. So you've got the domestic violence, and then on top of it, you've got horrific gang violence. This is a woman who has lost both a sister and a brother to the gangs. Her brother resisted recruitment and thus was found stabbed 100 times, which is the thing that they do. The threat that her ex uses against her all the time and backs up with his new buddies is that their daughter will pay the price if she doesn't do whatever he wants. And so her husband, her new husband, who adores her, said, I would rather you be thousands of miles away and safe than here and going through this. So she strapped her children to her back, metaphorically, because they are too old for that. She left the man who has given her the only joy she's had in this fucked up world. And she came here. Okay? She came here. Her only surviving sibling lives in Houston, was granted political asylum a few years ago. So she that she had asylum. She didn't have to sneak in. She should present at the port of entry. So she went across the bridge in Laredo. And she went to, presented herself and said that she was seeking asylum. And she was told at the U.S.-Mexican border by Border Patrol that in order to get asylum, or in order to gain entry, she had to go back to Mexico, go back to the Laredo side, the Mexico side of Laredo, meet up with Mexican immigration, put her name on a list being kept by Mexican immigration, which would then be provided to them on the bridge, and that then they would put her on a list to eventually be allowed into the United States. So she did this. She jumped through their stupid hoops, which are, in fact, not the law. Like, this happened to her. This is not supposed to have happened to her. That's not the policy. That's not how any of this works. That's arbitrary, cruel bullshit. But that's the nicest thing that happened to her at the border. 2 days later, they let her in with her kids, 2.5 days later. But as soon as she crosses over, she's subjected to a full body search, full cavity search. Every single thing that she and the children have brought with them from El Salvador, for that entire distance, is thrown away because you don't need this where you're going. They won't let you have this where you're going. And they take her to the place called the Icebox. Now, the Icebox is not like a play on the term ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement. Icebox in this case is a name that detainees have given to the detention center in Laredo. And they call it this because it's so fucking cold inside all the time. And you're kept in these very small sort of cells that they refer to as the boxes. You're kept in these boxes. And it's just freezing. It is like, it's like some superhero movie shit where they torture the powerful person by just getting them so cold that they can't use their power or something. It just doesn't seem like it's real. She was only there for 24 hours. Other people are there for longer. She was quick to tell me that. But while she was in the icebox, one of the first things that was said to her was by one of the guards or agents or whatever they're called, who told her that the United States no longer grants asylum. So she was going to be deported. She was put into this box. I don't know how big it was. This holding cell. But it was just her and her 2 children. There was no water. There was no bathroom. When she told them that she and her children needed to use the bathroom or needed water, they were told that the guards were not there to take care of them. In the 24 hours she was there, they were given 2 bathroom breaks and 2 water breaks. She had to beg for food for her children, which gained the response of the guards eating their food in front of the children. She begged for blankets, even those crappy space blankets that we see in all those pictures of, and no blankets were provided. So she had to sleep on the floor of this cell, this freezing cold cell, with her 2 children. When I asked her to clarify, to make sure, no, there was no bed, there was no furniture you could sleep on, she was like, there was a metal bench, but it was colder than the floor. This is the United States of America. This is what the United States of America put that woman through. That woman who had been through the worst, most hellish domestic violence and had lost 2 siblings to gang violence and had been targeted by MS-13 because her ex-husband is psychotic and part of them. Who had been extorted and constantly threatened with her death and the deaths of her children, who then left behind the only good man in El Salvador, I am convinced. She comes to the United States, and that's what we did to her. We put her and her 2 children in a freezing cell with no toilet, no water. And then the next day, then they were moved to the dog pound. And she's the first person I have encountered who spoke positively of the dog pound. But it is because the icebox is even more evil. The dog pound is in McAllen. It's the one with the cages. But it's better than the icebox. And when I asked her about the conditions there, she said that it was awful, but there was a toilet and there was water. And she said there was one guard there, and I sort of flinched and steeled myself to hear what the fuck this asshole had done. But no, there was one guard there at McAllen who used his own money to buy milk and cookies for the kids, and who saw that she had bled through her pants, and so he got her towels so she could clean herself up, and a feminine hygiene pad. Same man. He was a good man, she said. And yes, he is. He is in hell. And he is trying to keep onto his soul. And he is trying to be compassionate and humane. By comparison to that, she finds Dilley delightful. I mean, this is a woman who couldn't get through a sentence without weeping. Literally, like, she sat down, I asked if she wanted her children to leave. She was very glad to hear that was an option, because she didn't want them to hear all that she had endured. And then as soon as the door closed behind them, she just started sobbing. She had been holding it together for so long. And everything she talked about, just more floods of tears. And finally, I was like, okay, like I was trying to sort of give her a break. And I said, why don't we go back? And I have some really simple questions here. You know, I said, we can take a break. She's like, no, I want to finish. I said, okay, well, let me ask you some questions that are not emotional questions, you know. And so I asked basic things like, were you, are you pregnant? Or are you and you or your children needing medical care? This is our sort of intake to see what we can do. And then, were you ever denied entry at a point of entry in the United States? Oh, yes. And that's where all of this came out. I said in my video yesterday, or rather the video I did earlier today, but that would be yesterday when I post this, that I really want to do some advocacy on this issue. And I really feel like I want to keep working here, but I will look for any group I can that is taking the fight to these places right at the border, which are run by ICE and which are full of sadists and designed by sadists. I mean, this can't, I don't want to say this isn't who we are, because clearly we have been and we are being, but I'm not going to allow it to be who we continue to be. to the extent that I can. I need this, I need to feel like I'm doing something to stop that. So, I gotta go to sleep. Love you guys.